Greetings, programs. I have a little teeny tiny bit of a confession for you. I never saw Tron until now. That's right, I watched 1982's Tron and 2010's Tron Legacy back to back and completely of my own free will in preparation for today's review of Tron Identity, a visual novel from Bithell Games. What can I say? Never doubt my commitment to an assignment or to procrastination, because that was definitely a factor in this marathon as well. I can go no further without addressing the massive mouse-eared elephant in the room. It's super weird to discuss an indie game when the Disney logo pops up in the first 10 seconds of booting it, but here we are. Though this title may bear the Disney brand, it comes to us from the development team behind Thomas Was Alone, Volume, and Subsurface Circular, so it definitely earned its place on our little indie space. Tron Identity was not necessarily on my radar, and I'm not sure why it's coming out now, but let's enter the grid and give it a go, shall we? This also probably goes without saying, but I'll say it anyway. It definitely helps to have a little background on the source material, otherwise you may feel a bit 404 error file not found with some of the jargon being thrown around. I'm not saying you can't figure out what's going on with the proper brain software, but I don't always run the updates I should on my brain OS, and I can only speculate that some of you out there are just like me. Though, to be honest, that's how I felt while watching the original Tron for the first time anyway. It's a lot of information crammed into just over an hour and a half of cinema, but we're not here to review the movie. We're reviewing the game, so let's fast forward about 40 years. This isn't your daddy's grid, and there are many new programs to acquaint ourselves with in Tron Identity. This grid has also seemingly been abandoned by its users and is a bit of a digital ghost town. Here you'll play as Query, a detective program tasked with solving the mystery of an explosive break-in at the repository. Who broke in, and what did they take? More importantly, what's being hidden from the denizens of this world? And why did all the programs in the general vicinity of the explosion suffer memory damage? Well, you'll have to do a bit of reading to find out. This is a visual novel, after all. As is common with the genre, a fair amount of gameplay is reading intensive. You'll be consuming compelling and emotive scenes, especially when you consider the complete lack of humanity involved here, and selecting options from dialogue trees to make substantial changes to the outcome of the game. When you're not deciding the fate of the world or its programs, you're solving identity disk defrag puzzles. Say that 3 times fast. You help the programs impacted by the blast to regain their memories by solving what are essentially number and symbol matching puzzles. It took me a second to grasp the concept, but that's only because there's very little tutorial in the beginning. But once I got my bearings, I look forward to these puzzle sequences. Many of the subsequent puzzles introduced new elements and complications, which helped keep things fresh and interesting. If you simply can't get enough of these defrag puzzles and you don't want to put in the work of reading to get there, Tron Identity also features an endless puzzle mode, so you can match cards to your processor brain's content. Runtime for this title is maybe slightly longer than a Tron film, depending on the user's reading speed and how quickly you can solve the defrag puzzles. However, you will definitely want to jump back in and try doing things a bit differently on your next run to see how those decisions impact the world and the conclusions of these events. Even the most simple decisions can change things pretty dramatically. Graphics in Tron Identity are surprisingly engaging. I have to admit, I'm not necessarily a big fan of the Tron franchise color palette and presentation in general. It's drab and not in a fun, gothic way, in a washed out, dead digital wasteland kind of way, and I get enough of that at work. Hits a little too close to home for my taste. That said, the way this game makes mostly still images feel interactive and alive makes all the difference in the world, or grid. Moving the cursor around your screen will reveal points of interest that can provide additional context to the story. Those same movements can also shift the perspective of the image, which is a really neat touch. Portrait art is also really lovely with a deeply saturated cinematic quality. The world itself and the environments do feel stark and empty, but that does appear to be intentional, especially considering the context. Speaking of stark, music is definitely on the uncanny, even a little unsettling side, but in such a beautiful way. It captures the essence of the franchise and the Tron universe perfectly, and sound effects pack some terrific punch as well. I do wish there was voice acting, especially for some of the more poignant moments, as I really think that would have added some real impact, but I can certainly understand the artistic and financial decision not to. When it comes to visual novels, the important questions tend to be, is it a story worth telling? And if so, is that story told in a compelling way? And is there a reason to go back in and play it again? To those questions, Tron Identity deserves a resounding yes. Even without the context of the storied franchise, the plot is intriguing and beckons the reader forward. The decisions are thought-provoking and meaningful, and the outcome has impact. Within the confines of the existing atmosphere and imagery of Tron, as well as those of the visual novel genre in general, the game has an innovative presentation that maintains visual interest, even if it's not the most beautiful world. I do wish the game was a little bit longer, as I believe there are more stories that can be told to add additional context to the characters beyond the additional endings, but I suppose a good story should leave the reader hungry for more, and that leaves room for additional updates in the future.